All right, we'll get started. We are some of the creative team from the collaborative project Missing from the Museum. My name is Troy Scheid. I'm with Brave Little Company in Houston, Texas. And let me go, Brittany, go ahead and introduce yourself too, since you're here as well.
Hi, my name is Brittany Bush, and I'm also with Brave Little Company from Houston, Texas.
How about Amber?
I am Amber Wolf. I'm with Trike Theater out of Bentonville, Arkansas.
And Rachel?
I'm Rachel Thurmer from Dare to Dream Theater on the Lakeshore in Wisconsin.
And Jody?
Hi, I'm Jody Dresner-Alprin. I'm with Off the Page in Brooklyn, New York.
All right, one of the things that this moment where theaters are closed and museums are closed allows us to do is to reconceive how we think of theater production, and the creation of works for kids. Missing from the Museum is an online adventure series that streams through our Facebook page. If you go to facebook.com/missingfromthemuseum, you'll find all the information there. If I can ask each of you what drew you to this project when we first started working on it. We'll start with Jody.
Sure. So we were thinking a lot about, in the moment when everything closed, about what it means to be theater makers in this moment of the pandemic, when everything about our lives was sort of moving online. And for us, we create so much of our work is devised, and we create it with youth and with professional actors. And we were sort of thinking, what is that experience like if you can't be in the room with people to be creating? And then Troy had this idea and was like, does anybody want to talk about what this might look like? And it felt like still being able to be in dialogue with makers, and to have something that wasn't just something that we made and put out, but something that that we could be getting responses from the people who are on this adventure with us, and using that to guide us going forward. And that to us was really exciting, that it still could have like a devised feel. We like to call it, at Off the Page, we call it wild collaboration. And we mean that between like all of our creative team, like all of the artists and playwrights and makers and movers and musicians. But we also mean it with our audiences, like all the kids and all the families and that come with it. And this felt like a wild collaboration. So we're like, yeah, sign up for that.
Amber, how about you?
Two things kind of drew me to it. One was the challenge of doing this wild adventure and this collaboration on this platform that I guess as theaters, we haven't really taken full advantage of. We have this online platform that exists, and we kind of post our YouTube videos or like use it for promotion, but we don't really use it as a platform for full interaction in the way that this project attacks it. And so that wild collaboration that you're talking about on this platform that allows us these kind of possibilities that I don't think would be possible if we were trying to do this in person, and the audiences that we have a potential to reach that, might not ever have an opportunity to have this kind of engagement with art history and theater and performance and art itself. And so that was like, oh yeah, this is a challenge that is dope, that is cutting edge, that is something that is going to be a lot of fun and make my brain do cool things. And the other one was that mission of clear-sightedness. When I read that in the script, and seeing the people, looking for the people that are missing in the room, that are not being included, I was like, yes, sister, yes. Let me be all over that. And so with that mission and that platform and that quest and that drive, with this wild adventure that we get to go on, I was just like, oh yeah, please let me do this. Please let me be a part of this. And Trike as well. We're diggity down.
What about you, Rachel?
For me personally, the idea of choose your own adventure stories was like being able to build it as it's going and feeling like you're so much a part of it At Dare to Dream, one thing that we really love is bringing the audience into the story, whether it be through theater for the very young or any of the interactive theatrical experiences from a classroom to partnerships with the libraries. It's all about bringing people into the story and letting them add to it and tell it. So when Troy came up with the idea or mentioned the idea in one of our affinity meetings and says, hey, what about trying this? I was all for it because it's not exactly an area that I can do myself. It's way better with collaboration. And it's really cool that all these organizations from around the country are able to come together in this platform in this way, probably not necessarily able to happen in any other format. Try and do a choose your own adventure on a live stage, as cool as that would be. I think it may be beyond the ability of theater. So here's a new platform and a new opportunity and a new exploration in a new format. It was just a cool idea to be on the beginning of something that could be super cool.
Brittany.
Well, wow. You guys have said a lot of the things that attracted me to it. That question of how to do theater right now when everything was shutting down. And for me as a theater instructor for very young children, that was a challenge of how to be able to connect with them and to get them to be creative when they're looking at a square and my face at a square and not being in the room with them. And so I was excited to join that kind of collaborative, wild devising, wild collaboration to figure that out. And I knew with the theaters that were included that there would be this commitment to a certain type of storytelling, that's really brave and that's about creating community and creating conversations and creating theater for young people that's not talking down to the audience, but is sort of inviting them and inspiring them and seeing them as a co-collaborator. So that always makes me excited, as you guys have already mentioned, to just bring the audience into the action as kind of a co-collaborator, co-creator, and not just kind of dictate something to them. And I could tell right away that that's what we were creating. Also, to jump into a creative process and not really know what's on the other end is always just such a great opportunity because it's like a wild ride. It really is. So yes, that's why.
And I think for me, the fact that the restrictions on us now are different from the restrictions that we had when we could tour to schools or libraries or when our theaters were open. But restrictions for me are always a jumping off point for creativity and improvisation. And even though Brittany and I are in the same city and everybody else is in a different city, I feel like because we're communicating exclusively online, we're all equidistant from each other. And so that makes these partnerships that would have at least involved a very long drive in the past happen instantaneously. So we can create something that's under the constraints of our circumstances now, but also liberated by the constraints of our circumstances now. And I think Brave Little Company's work is always committed to reflecting Houston's diversity. And one of the big challenges in Houston is getting a child and their family to a physical theater. It's not a walking city. If there's a transportation desert and you don't have reliable access to a car, you may not ever get to go to a Houston theater or museum. But this is a piece that we hope will engage people online. Maybe their first piece of theater will be seen through a smartphone. And then through the kind of hybrid types of engagement that we have planned, they'll not only watch the episodes, but participate in the interludes, puzzles, clues, and activities that happen during the week. And then once it's safe, get to go to a museum that's mentioned in the series in Houston or in Arkansas or one of our other locations, and get to go to a theater once it's safe to go there again. All right, I'm looking at the hourglass that Jody has, which if you watch the series features in the series. And the second question I want to go to, while we still have some grains of time remaining, is can you talk about a work of art that was very impactful for you? And let's go with Brittany.
Well, I'll go real fast because I don't want to waste our grains of sand. But I know Degas had the little bronze ballerina, and that was one of my first times that I would stare at a piece of art and think, who is she and what is she doing? And so it sparked that that curiosity. And then Picasso's Guernica and Van Gogh's Swirling Cypresses were the first times that I just looked at a piece of art and was slammed with emotion. So with Guernica, it just really, you feel like there's war happening. And with the trees, I could feel his mental anguish, his pain. I mean, it's a picture of a tree, but the paint is like caked on there, and you can really feel Van Gogh's pain. And then finally, the Sugar Sphinx. It's it was this huge a sugar sculpture that looked like a sphinx, but also looked like a woman who might have worked at a sugar plantation. And it was by Carol Walker. And that was the first time I saw art that exploded my mind in a social change way of like, here are people that you don't even think about, that don't have a voice, that nobody remembers. You're eating sugar every day, which is the product of the work that they did. So it like gave a voice, gave us a picture of those people, and then also educated me about history in a kind of social activist way. Okay.
Rachel.
That.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, when I was in high school and got to take art classes, it's the first time that I sort of experienced artists. And I was really drawn to Monet and to Bouguereau. And Monet, I got an opportunity to go and see one of his works, and I'm standing there in front of the water lilies, and I'm seeing all of these amazing colors in there, and how a tiny little spot in up close is just a tiny little spot of paint, but then you back up and you see the big picture. And it sort of showed me or was a picture of what art is. Art is a little tiny piece of a big question. And you see the art and you want to find the answers. And that's the purpose of art or theater, at least in my mind. And Bouguereau, just because of all the pain and the joy and everything in the eyes of those children and how real they were. Again, it was paint, but it looked like they could jump off the page and tell their story.
Jody.
Okay, I'm going to go with a more recent one. But there's a piece by Simone Lee, who is a sculptor, and she just did, it's, I believe, one of her first like large scale works, and it's called Brick House. And it's here in New York City on the High Line, which is like an elevated park that we have here. And it sits on this bridge that overlooks 10th Avenue. So if you're driving uptown on 10th Avenue or in a cab or bus or whatever, there's this amazing woman, giant woman that's like looking down at you from the High Line. And I love it because I love when art puts itself in places where it's not supposed to be and like breaks the rules. And it's so unexpected in this, like your day to day going through the city that you see it. And I also love it because we don't have a great history in New York City of like having a wide representation of the kinds of people that were represented in our sculptures, like almost entirely white men in the sculptures that are part of the city, you know, like in our parks and things like that. And so to see a different representation of this gorgeous woman who is just like owning 10th Avenue when you go down, and it's a different experience if you go up and look at it on the High Line. But I just think it's here, you know, I think until the fall it's supposed to be. And it's just such a unexpected and sort of like delightful, like, oh yeah, that's what art can do moment every time I see it.
For me, I'm going to say an exhibit of Nick Cave sound suits that I saw at the Seattle Art Museum that by accident, I was there for another event. And the sound suits are these wearable art pieces that a performer or the artist puts on and moves around it. And they have a lot of sources of inspiration, like kind of African masks or like full body masks. I'm not sure what the term is, but and then they're also kind of thrifted. So there are all kinds of ceramic figurines and knitted bags and hats and being in a hall full of probably 40 sound suits was like being in a ceremony that had been frozen, or being kind of in the presence of demigods, and a piece that straddles the line between being a piece to view and being a piece to be performed in, I think for me was really cool. But I love the sound suits, and they're so gosh, they're present and they feel alive. Amber.
Okay. There's a lot, but my first interaction with a female artist that really impacted me was Georgia O'Keeffe. And I was in my women's art history class in college, and they showed us her early watercolor work, and just her work with color and line and the fluidity of her work. And her, I'm going to paint what I want to paint, I don't care what society says about it, really moved me. Because I had a lot of people telling me, like, you're not a real artist, and that kind of stuff that all artists go through. But her story and her art really impacted me. But the piece in particular is Blue 1 on paper. It's one of her watercolor pieces, and it's just those dark blues with the swirls and the straight lines. And I don't know, I stared at it and it was like, this is it. This is the good stuff, you know? And it moved something inside of me. Like I can be an artist. Like I can paint, I can do things. And she gave me the confidence to really do what I wanted and not what I felt was right. So.
All right.
Yeah.
And as our last few grains of sand run out, I will say again that our project is called Missing from the Museum. It is an online choose your own adventure type series. The first episode is Sunday, June 14th at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. Look us up on facebook.com/Missing from the Museum, or at Brave Little Company's website, Dare to Dream Theater's website, Trike Theater's website, or Off the Page Education's website. All right, adventurers, we hope to see you there.